You're listening to Mystical Science, the show that reveals the mysteries of the universe, so listeners can live more consciously connected.
Welcome. This is a new show on the Superpower Up, Mystical Science. I'm your host, Karen Elkins, and we're here to explore science to sage. For 10 years, I've done extensive research in the convergence of science, consciousness, and world philosophies. This new show, Mystical Science, will engage the world leaders, innovative thinkers, discussing their insights, their innovation, and their inspiration. My intention in these conversations is to ignite the awareness of your inner mystic and invite you to connect to your superpowers, your super gift to the world. Through the years of creating Science to Sage magazine, which I've done over 60, and I've also conducted a massive amount of interviews with scientists behind the scenes, most of all the science reveal that their spiritual awareness, their insights, and the magical moments that they've had, be it their dreams, an aha, or a download. But the interesting thing is this is not something that's just for the elite group of people. It is for everybody. It is the insights that we all get when we have these magical aha moments. And breakthroughs don't come in books. They come in revelation. So as Jesus says, ask, and the door shall be open. I hope these shows inspires you to question, to be curious, and trust your own inner guidance. So let's explore. Today, our guest is Tonya Dawn Rakla. She is the executive director of the Superpowered Network and now hosting one of the top 1% shows on this entire global planet. During her career as a government special agent, she explored the human psyche, honed her superpowers, and cracked the code of enlightenment and self-actualization. Tonya continues as a lifelong student of energy manipulation, transmutation, clear senses, intentional molecular creation, etc. She believes everybody has the power to create a multi-dimensional existence and to master our human experience. Her superpowered net engages in recruiting other mutants, and now her version of it is special forces to working with the force. Today's episode and the first episode of Mystical Science is hearing the call and awakening to the mystical science for the everyday mystic. So my first question, welcome to Tonya.
Thanks, Kara. I'm so excited about your show. This is so awesome.
One of the things that made me really curious is how do you identify mutants? Your superpower forces.
That's quite the question, isn't it? So it's like, for all the X-Men fans out there, it's kind of like, what's it called? Cerebral, whatever. And it really, my abilities really work the same way. I discovered early on in this whole superpower conversation that I just, for whatever reason, I'm gifted with the ability to see when people enter into a level of consciousness that we call the abstract frequency. Those were the words that were given to us. And so when people are in that or when they drop out of it, for some reason, I can just detect that. And so mutants, in our estimation, are those who are willing to play in that space, because that's really where those sacred gifts, those superpowers come to life in an effective, reliable way.
It's interesting. I think I remember you mentioning on another show that you were called because there's an important time in history of the planet where we need to literally move people into a higher state of consciousness. And I always thought the word apocalypse was interesting. Most people think the word apocalypse is disaster, but in actuality, it means lifting of the veil. So all of the different shows you have on your network talk really to the nature of how, in one sense, the mystical aspects of living don't become so mysterious and aren't so hidden. And so what has been your special tool? What's your special toolbox that you use to awaken yourself?
I am so giddy right now that you brought up apocalyptic and really kind of broke that down, because that's exactly, that describes my experience exactly. And so I always laugh at things because Tatiana Baranday, our host for Sex, Love, and Superpower, she's our creative director. And so she's the one that really helped me understand that I reverse engineer everything, right? I work backwards. And for most of my life, I just assumed that I just didn't get it, right? Like I just wasn't like everybody. Something was broken. Like there was some sort of flaw in my code. I knew that I was pretty intelligent because that's what the feedback I was getting, but it just didn't, like, for some reason I always kind of felt like, that one of these things is not like the others, that was kind of where I fit. And so in understanding that now, I understand how all of this happened. And so my enlightenment, my awakening was, it happened in the same exact way. Like I didn't know at the time what was going on. I only knew in retrospect what had happened. And what I can attribute that to, some of it's the military mindset, some of it's just my makeup, is that I just kind of did what I was told. And so as this voice, as the awarenesses started coming to me, my tool was to follow the guidance. And in essence, it was kind of this awareness of like, okay, I feel like I've taken myself about as far as I could. I mean, I had a master's degree. I was a counter intel agent. I was running around chasing spies. Like I'd pretty well checked like some significant boxes. I'd done a few things, if you will. And so, and there was still this kind of, wanting, this like seeking, this kind of hole I was trying to fill, and none of the boxes that I knew about were resolving that. And so I was like, okay, obviously I knew new boxes, which means I don't know something. Who knows? And then all of a sudden, this divine kind of inspiration voice came in. And I was like, well, maybe they know more than I do. And so it was more happenstance, in retrospect, than much of anything else.
Well, it humors me in the sense that in one sense you're uncovering secrets in different ways. So you're instead of trying to find the spies who are having secrets, now you're finding secrets that are within the universe and listening to that inner voice, because it is a lot of people don't understand how the field works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an interesting part to sort of talk about a bit, because what we consider mystical and magical and mysterious is often, when we look at how the field literally is constructed, it is part of what I know you speak of as the one. So how do you speak, or how does it, you say it's just like guiding voices. Is there any other insights you can give to us related to that?
Well, I first want to say that's part of the reason why I'm so incredibly excited about this show is your inquisitiveness in this space, because I think it's important that we kind of disentangle all of this. And it does get really fuzzy and kind of vague and mystical and mysterious and all that stuff. And I think it keeps a lot of people out of it because it's like there's no framework for it. And so I love that you're bridging this gap between mysticism and science. In fact, there's a quote, we're all about superheroes in our family. And so Thor says on one of the movies, your ancestors called it magic, but you call it science. I came from a land where they are one and the same. And that's kind of the answer to your question, in the sense that I don't differentiate. The divine to me is in everything. And when you go looking for it, you see it, right? Now, is that self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it rose-colored glasses and Pollyannish? I don't really care at this point, because I live a pretty freaking amazing existence. And so I have enough proof at this point that whatever I'm doing is working, both on a logical, realistic level as well as on a divine level. And so when you start merging all of that together is when you really find those holistic, full answers that everybody's looking for. It's when we say, well, I don't know if this is scientific, and I don't know if we can prove this, and I don't know this, and I don't know that. That's when we, on some level, have to call ourselves out on our own whatnot, because it's our discerning mind, our opinionated mind that's trying to keep us safe, rather than exploring these worlds that make no sense to us, right? They seem scary. And so part of the trick there is quieting the discerning mind. It doesn't mean just take everything at face value, drink the Kool-Aid, all this other stuff, which is a big fear that the collective holds. But instead it's saying, okay, I'm going to trust that I'm safe in every situation, and that I can follow my curiosities and I can explore the world. And if it doesn't fit for me, then that's cool. Like I can at least say I tried it, versus kind of this 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing of like, well, at the first sign of anything that I don't agree with, I'm going to tuck tail and run, right? Which is kind of the survival mentality. So when you move into this kind of recognizing that the world really does operate to your benefit, there's a concept called pronoia, and it's the idea that the universe is kind of working on your behalf, versus paranoia. And so when you adopt that philosophy, it's all a playground. You can just play with it. And so that's when science and the mystical and the divine and all that stuff starts to make a lot of sense together.
Aha. Tanya, how do we find the whole network? How do we find you in the entire network?
Oh, brilliant. You can just go to superpowerexperts.com and find all things there. You can take the quiz on the homepage and find out your superpowers, or click on the podcast tab to listen to the network.
Okay. And so with this short break, we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Rekla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts. And we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz. And as Neva Lee Rekla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world.
Okay, and we're back. We're back to this episode called Healing the Call and Awakening to the Mystical Mind. We're here again with Tonya Dawn Rekla, and we left off, and where we want to begin, there was something that made me think about how we get into the flow. And I think when we think of scientists, Mozart was in the flow. Einstein was inspired by images. Ben Franklin received his ideas in a flash. Descartes, Tesla through their dreams, and Archimedes in the tub. It was Eureka. So there is a force in the field that you talk about a lot relative to vibration and frequency, but also a lot of this is the emanation of what we call a holographic, akashic, fractal nature of reality, which actually comes to us, speaks to us, and lives within us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love it. I think it links back to what we were talking about right before the break about what I would deem, seeing the divine in all things. So we have a heavy kind of spiritual component. So a lot of our analogies and stuff come with that in mind. But it's, whether you call it energy or the divine or God or Christ consciousness, like whatever it is for you, there is a, as you raise your frequencies and kind of play with some of this stuff, there's an undeniable thread that links it all. And you can harness that, right? It's like you can ride those waves. You can be in that. And that's really the world that we all are craving, right? That's where our true autonomy and freedom and everything else exists. And so all of those, the brilliance of the brilliant minds that you were mentioning and how they kind of came to be and how we came to know of them, a big part of that is suspension of like disbelief, but also the willingness to just not be normal. And recognizing that the vast majority of society is constructed to keep us in the status quo. Well, that's fine if people are comfortable in the status quo. Well, most of the divergence of the world are not. Most of the creatives of the world are not. And so how do you live in a way that allows you to continue in society and function and profit and everything else, and also be true to your own design? Which is a big part of the reason why superpower experts exist. We excel at weird and we give everybody the freedom to be, and to be their design and to recognize the complexities of that and the contradictions within it all. And those don't scare us. So we run into those conversations that most people avoid because we trust that it's all a brilliant design. And when you get a high enough vantage point, when you work on your expansion and you work on your frequencies and everything else, you get a high enough vantage point, you can see it and it's undeniable from that place. It's just really hard to see when you're, it's the whole, when you're staring at a tree, it's hard to see the entire forest.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of an idea that with something that people could visualize and then kind of understand. When Tesla, the reason we actually have the phones that we have, the cell phones, where we can communicate these particles dancing in these waves that sort of magically happen instantaneously. The reason we have that, when Tesla's mother passed away, he was still in contact with her. And he thought there must be a frequency, there must be a place in this space where we can become aware. and we can have communication. So Marconi was the one who actually finished Tesla's work. He went into his lab and finished it off. But within that living matrix is this energetic field. And we don't think about it. When you think of submarines to airplanes, they still have these sonic waves. And we think of things on the electromagnetic spectrum. And the question is, how wide is your bandwidth? And so for somebody like you, your bandwidth is you're tuning it up and tuning and dialing to higher and higher levels of vibration.
Yeah, I appreciate that affirmation. And it's important to know it was very intentional. I sacrificed everything in the name of this quest. And then Justin and I came together in our marriage and did the exact same thing. And then we, brought Neva into it, and she's made that commitment as well. So it's not normal. Like we don't pretend to be following the same rules as everybody else or pretend to be led by the same motivations as everyone else. We're pretty open about the fact that we answer to a much higher power than that. And so, but it's not anarchy. It's not lawlessness. It's self-dominion within the constructs that we've agreed to play in. Right. So I think a lot of people think it's got to be either or. And that's why this show to me is so incredibly exciting, because where we see a lot of people falter in their development is they want proof. Right. They have to have proof. And for sure, before we ever get to, the masses, we're going to have to show proof. And the numbers that we're still hearing are, 1% of the population is having these conversations. And of that 1%, less than 5% are actually willing to live it. Right. Those are still really, really relatively small numbers. And so we're not even to the social proof phase yet. But so many people are working toward that. And this show just moves the needle that much closer, because the mass consumption phase requires proof. Now, in my world, the worlds that we play in, we're creating the proof. Make no mistake about it. We believe that by asking the question, are superpowers real? We actually create the potentiality for them to be. End of story. Like, to think that we're discovering things and not having a hand in their creation misses the point. And so there's a really delicate balance between faith, intentionality, and proof. And I think that comes out of every conversation where we start to tie in the mystical and the science and the magic and the spiritual with real world kind of concepts. And that's why I love people like some of the folks you're bringing on the show, Greg Braden, and I've had Dean Radin on my show, and others who are actually making an effort to prove these concepts, because ultimately I think we all get that we're going to have to.
But it's interesting, because I do think we do get demonstrations. So, but I always like even what Greg says. It's because it comes from the ancient traditions, you must believe that it is so. I also know, as a youngster starting an advertising agency at 22, I just couldn't do anything else. I had to do my purpose. I had to resolve that wound within me. And who would it say at 22 you'd start your own advertising agency? And that in a matter of no time, all the pieces of the puzzle would show up. People would hire me. One guy got things done, so that was never the issue. But I didn't have the trackground. I actually created a portfolio where people could actually go, I'll take that one and that one and that one. So I let them shop in my shopping cart. And then I went and completed the work until I had my own portfolio. But if you follow, I love this part, it was making me think of you too, is in life, since now I'm not a spring chicken, you can see the different tapestry of life. You can see the threads like the breadcrumbs. There were every single time, there's always something leading you to the next thing. And sometimes it does take a leap of faith. But when you are driven by your passion, there's things that you do to break through. And with that sense of passion and encouragement, you must do. Like, you were woken up to your calling. I was woken up to do the book. The book. I heard this voice that says, "Get out of bed." And I'm going,
I laugh at how gentle that sounds. I was like,
no, it wasn't gentle. It happened. It did happen. And it was like, that was kind of weird. But it was so resounding. I said, fine. But I laughed because I said, you want me to do a book? because I'm dyslexic. And so over the course of actually me putting on events and doing the magazines and interviewing people, I thought maybe I could do a picture book. So actually that's what it is, my coffee table book. And my question was, how does God create? So in the course of this new show, there has been in the book, there's over 60 scientists in it, and it is an award-winning book in the area of science, which I would have thought would have been area of science and consciousness, because I weave spiritual traditions and science and the common sense things where you begin to see the threads of how everything really, when you can see the pieces of the puzzle come together, you go, I get it. It doesn't always make the ride easy, but it does make the ride one you can't get off of. Am I right? Right?
Well, you can, but it's painful.
No, but here's the problem. You recycle.
Yeah. So, you're getting back on it for sure.
Yeah, you're getting back on.
It's painful to get off, and it's painful to get back on. You're better off just staying.
Well, here's the fun part, that once you actually learn that all we are is made of these basic elements, water, fire, and air, which are really liquid, solids, and gases, which is ancient to modern wisdom. Those are the things we need to learn how to regulate within ourselves. Then we begin to have some control over the box that we have that we're driving, and learn how to find more peace, how to not be more reactive, and how to do those things. And many of the people we will be bringing into the show will be exploring those things, because it's been their journey. And here's the fun part with all these things: their journey is their exploration. It's not like they came in an expert. When I started doing the book, I had no clue what I was going to learn, but what came and what get downloaded, what was gifted, it's been remarkable. It's amazing. So, but you have to take the journey.
For sure. And it's so much brilliance in everything you just got done saying there. There was, I was doing an interview the other day and I was laughing because I said, resistance used to be futile. Now it's just painful. It's like, just stop. Like, and you do kind of get to that place. And of course we can laugh about it now, but I feel like it's really important to let people know, like, that I absolutely was in resistance. I was a counterintelligence agent with the U.S. government. Like, so again, one of the most paranoid, suspicious kind of environments that you could put yourself in, and got the call to start the awakening process, and it happens, and the divine knows what it's doing. Like, it's going to give you enough, and it's not going to reveal everything, because we'd all run around screaming and just stop. But so the bits and pieces that I got initially were like, oh, I'm okay, I guess, yeah, okay, I could do that. And then when after Justin and I got married, and I find myself in this kind of intuitive coaching stuff, going, no, we have a corporate counterintelligence firm, and and if any of you have listened to this show for more than a day, you probably know a lot about this story. But where it ties into what Karen's talking about is, I think it's important to note that there are a couple steps along the way. And the first one really is a leap of faith, because there was nothing logical about it at all. And I had to make a very conscious effort. For me, it showed up as, am I willing to play full out? And I was not for quite a while. And I resisted, and I was like, you want me to do what? And I was like, no, thanks. Go find somebody else. Oh, and then you want me to create a synergistic collaborative network? No, thank you. I don't play well with others, well, where it made no sense for the dyslexic to write a book, it made no sense for the individual to try to teach collaboration, because I just wasn't interested. In fact, I was pretty opposed to the whole team concept. And so there was, the divine is not without its sense of humor, and there's an extreme intentionality to it. There was a very conscious decision, and it meant that everything that came along, I had to be willing to weigh it against that metric, right? Is this in alignment with my evolution? How am I approaching this situation? And you said, we have to kind of control and manage those elements within us. Well, that a lot of people get caught up in that, because in the spiritual side of things, we talk about flow and surrender. And then they're like, well, yeah, now you're telling me I have to manage things. And it's like, let's be very clear. You have a responsibility to manage yourself to the point where you can commune with the divine as you surrender into it. But you will always have to manage the aspects of this that, given an inch, will try to drag us off course, right? That is your job. And there is a control, quote unquote, aspect to it. But make no mistake about it, we're not saying you have to kind of control the hows and the divine and everything else. So there is what people would conceive of as a contradiction from certain frequencies. But again, as you get this expansive kind of observer perspective, you're able to see that it's not contradictory. In fact, it's very harmonious, but it makes no sense until you do it, right? You really have to, and that's where the leap of faith comes into play.
That also reminds me of the thought that everything is evolution, and therefore there is a revolution of your thoughts, and you have to expand your own mind. So it is a journey, and so it does require us to step into some part of faith. And as far as being a mutant, I can certainly relate, because I am in my family. It's like, what are you doing? But
Karen, you are in the world. What are you talking about? You're like the quintessential mutant. It's like I just love playing with you, because I just kind of tilt my head sometimes, and I was like, wow, but the complexities and the contradiction and everything that you hold, it's so beautifully designed. Like, there is no plausible explanation other than the divine had a hand in this for all the reasons that you've been talking about, and everything that I see moving forward. That's you. Like you have a very, very, very big play here. If for nothing else, it's to model for people, like, it is okay. Like, stop trying to be normal. Now, that doesn't mean you have to give everything else up, or you can't get wealthy, you can't have a family, you can't have all these things. Of course you can, but that's only going to happen when you accept the fact that you are brilliantly designed, and you're not designed to look like anyone else. And that's okay.
And I don't.
You don't.
I don't.
At all.
I know.
You broke every mold.
I did. And I'm still hanging in there. I'm going for it. And I've never known how. Here's the funny thing. When you have it in your soul to just do what you do, you can't be anyone else. And I think, there's some saying Jesus says, if you don't do what's within you, it will kill you. In other words, you are designed to be that gift. And unfortunately, I know part of what your mission is to, you have your young daughter, and is to create a space and a platform for this next generation to take over, to be inspired. And so I think that is amazing. And part of my journey has been when I have a son who was labeled gifted, but also it's like, I'm dyslexic. He can't do math. And we step into spaces and places that we would not normally do. I created an educational platform for 5 years. I stepped in, I did conferences, but wow, did it grow me. And if we don't step into we oftentimes give our power away, and if somebody else can't do it, we say, well, it can't be done. No, we get up and we make our mistakes. You get up and you do it again and again. And because you have something else besides just yourself to move the next generation, the globe, to a higher place. And that's what we're doing. And I am thrilled. And so with that said, I'd like to just ask you one again for the audience. Where is it that they can find more about actually this whole superpower network of light workers that you are supercharging to ignite minds? So I just want to even thank the audience for listening. And with that said, have you been called? Are you listening to your inner mystic? It's magical. So join me and Tanya and this continued conversation, and where you can find more about myself and is at sciencetosage.com. You can find the magazines. This is where the visual aspect of what I do will come alive. I have a book, I've got interviews, and again, everything that I do is taking a Renaissance approach, and that is the Renaissance looks across disciplines, it looks across platforms, so that we can think more divergently. And with all of these AI and all of these things, the thing that's going to keep us alive and well is creativity. That's one thing they can't do. So with that, Tonya, can you tell the audience once again where they can find you?
Of course. Go to superpowerexperts.com, and that's where you're going to be able to find Mystical Science as well. And we are so incredibly excited to welcome Karen and Mystical Science to our network. I think it's much, much needed. It fills a gap that's going to bridge some spaces. And so, Karen, thank you for being courageous and for stepping into this, for saying yes, even when sometimes it makes no sense. It's that clear guidance of, yeah, this is where we're going, and we're going to go there together. And to all of you out there, thank you all for making Superpower Up Network the #1 network in personal development and spiritual growth. We're very excited about that. We know you're listening, and just know that it matters. And Karen, I am incredibly excited about you, for you, and just I can't wait to see what you're going to do next.
That's me too. And actually, that's the fun part. I mean, I don't even know when I do the magazine which one's going to be next. But that is what I call letting go and getting into the flow, and the divine just fills that space with magical and mystical moments for the mind. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.